Welcome to Prolific Figures, presented by the United States Air Force Academy Way of Life Alumni Group. WOL places special emphasis on diversity and ensuring the success of future and current cadets and alumni. On this platform, we will engage with influential Black alumni who will share their perspectives on life before, during, and after USAFA. Join us on a journey of fruitful conversation and the celebration of USAFA's Black prolific figures.
Good morning, Prolific Figures family. We're excited to have you, and we got a great guest this morning. Her name is Kathryn Smith, class of 1982. Kate served as an acquisition officer in the United States Air Force after graduating from the Air Force Academy in 1982. She's a proven leader and problem solver and has worked primarily in aerospace and telecommunication industries. Most recently, Kate facilitated small group sessions to bridge the gap between cops and kids in forums across Denver, and advised the cadet squadron on ethics and honor. She's a member of Truman National Security Project, the director of Advocacy of ZASA, Zoomies Against Sexual Assault, and an Emerge Colorado alum. She's also a Notre Dame lawyer. Currently, she's an organizer with grassroots veteran organizations, Common Defense, and is a candidate for a Master of Arts in Public Leadership at the University of San Francisco. Without further ado, we are pleased to welcome Kathryn Smith to Prolific Figures. Welcome, Kate.
Hey, nice to see you again. It's good to see you young officers. So thanks for inviting me.
Yes, we're super grateful to have you, and thank you for making the time for this. And yes, I know you have had small experiences with you, and I've heard nothing but good things and heard good things about you. So we're super excited to have you here, and you can share some of your experiences with the audience.
Thank you.
So I just have a question. So I know you're from Kansas, and I don't want to dig into a fresh wound.
You're gonna hurt me.
How'd you think about the Super Bowl? How'd you feel?
Kansas City won it last year, and it would have been great to repeat. But Tampa Bay had a better day, and it hurts me. And just so people know, the team is actually in Kansas City, Missouri, but I've been a Chiefs fan since 1968, 69, the Buck Buchanan, Lenny Dawson, Jan Stenerud, Willie Lanier days. So, but I think the Kansas City team is young. They'll be back. So for all y'all in Florida and Tampa Bay, y'all won it this year, but we'll be back, running back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I felt like you guys were really battling the refs the first half, so I didn't appreciate that. I just wanted a good game, and that's not really what turned out.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. And I know we kind of touched on. We were talking a little bit before, just about a little bit of real estate, and I know there's a lot of academy grads out there that's been mentoring a lot of us young lieutenants and even cadets, and yeah, so what's been your experience? I know I was over at your house in Colorado about 2 years ago now. That was a nice home.
Oh, thank you. I wish someone had sat me down when I was a cadet, and the loan process was different back then. I mean, I think you guys get a little bit more money at the beginning of your senior year, and you can do a lot more with it. But I wish people had told me the value of saving and investment, and that real estate, it may have its ups and downs, but it's been a good investment. So after my daughter graduated from high school, I sold that house in Colorado and did a deal with my little brother that was good for him and good for me. And I moved back to Phoenix, where I'd had a rental house and I had some work done, and I moved back into it. So I just think that the mortgage is paid for, and I had a VA loan for it, so that helped as well. But to use your VA loan eligibility to invest, to save, I wish I had known that I didn't have to have the fanciest car to be cool, and wished I had saved or invested some money a little differently over time. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I know a lot of the young grads out here, and including myself, we appreciate all the mentorship that you guys have given us, and a lot of us have taken heed to the information given and started, building that wealth for ourselves early. So, we appreciate you all, and I know the whole community of graduates and future graduates appreciate you as well. So we like to start off with our cookout questions, also known as our comfort questions. So I guess my first question is, what is one thing you wish you had as a kid, but your parents wouldn't get it for you?
A lot of things. And I think as a lot of us, we grew up in working class families. And so we always had all the things we needed. We had food, shelter, medical attention. Our grandmother worked in an upscale clothing store. So we always had nice clothing, but we didn't have anything that wasn't a necessity. And so I wanted a 10-speed bicycle. And my mother said, well, good for you. And my father said, well, I guess you have to go buy it, pay for it. So I did all sorts of odd jobs. I tutored, I did chores for an elderly neighbor, and finally made enough money to buy myself a used 10-speed bike. And I think that was one of the values that my parents taught me, is that if you want something, you have to work for it.
Absolutely. I know for me, I feel bad now. You said a 10-speed bike. I know growing up, I really wanted PSP, so like the PlayStation Portable. When I first came out, I think I was in like late elementary school, early middle school, and a lot of people had it, and I did not, do what you did and work for it and save up for it and got one used. I just kept asking my mom for it, and she just kept telling me no, and I never got it. And I always wished I had one.
Do you have one now?
I don't have one now. I may have to get one for a throwback. But yeah. All right. Our second question is, what is your go-to dish when you go to a cookout?
Well, I don't know if I really want to tell this to the whole world, but most people know I'm not the best cook. So they don't expect me to bring a dish. They want me to bring the silverware, the paper plates, the ice, or the alcohol, because I'll eat a good baked beans or macaroni and cheese and ribs or greens or whatever, but you don't want me to cook it. I confess to that. So yeah, they want me to buy whatever you need to pick up at the store.
Well, yeah, we appreciate you being honest and sharing that. Gives me a little, I'm still working on my cooking abilities too. I take a lot of my losses in silence, and the ones I take pictures of, those are the,
Yeah.
I would say my go-to, I love potato salad. And
But you gotta do potato salad right. You can't bring no lame potato salad to somebody's cookout. So I don't even try.
Exactly. And I'm very judgmental of, if I'm a guest and first thing I go for is a potato salad. And if I don't like the potato salad, I'm gonna have to, put on a fake smile for the rest of the night and tell them the food was good.
And they're gonna talk about you if your potato salad ain't right.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And then our last comfort question that we ask all the guests: what do you love most about being Black?
I don't really ever think about it. As I tell people, I've been Black all my life. I don't know any different. And I guess what I like is the culture and knowing that my people have my back. I had to explain to my daughter when she was about 6 or 7, I had nodded at somebody going down the street and they nodded back at me. And she's like, Mom, you don't know them. Why are you nodding at them? And I said, it's culture, it's tradition. You see other Black people, you acknowledge that you see them, they acknowledge that they see you, and you know that you're going to be okay if something bad happens. And I love that about our people, is that we do our best to take care of each other. And I tell this story, and we don't have a whole lot of time, but I once was stopped by the police for driving while Black. And while I'm standing on the street corner, this little Black lady comes down off her porch and stands on the street, across the street, and she gives me that nod. And I see her, I nod back, and she stands there and waits until the police are done with basically interrogating me on the street corner before they let me go. And then when they did let me go, she walked across the street to make sure I was okay. And so that in and of itself is why I'm proud to be a Black woman, and I'll always be there for people because I expect them to be there for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, what would you say that nod and just that comfort that the woman across the street gave you, like how did that help you through the situation or add to the situation?
Well, I think what it did was, if something had happened, there would have been a witness to what happened. And I'm at the time I was afraid for my life. They pulled me over, they pulled guns, and I wasn't even speeding, so I didn't even know what I did. Turned out that my neighbor had called the police on me because he had never seen me before and figured that a Black woman in a red sports car didn't belong in my condominium. But it gave me the assurance that somebody would be a witness, and that was the comfort that she gave me.
That's ridiculous. What year did this happen, if you don't mind me asking?
It was 1986.
Mhm.
So that's a long time ago, almost 30 plus years. It was before people had video cameras on their phones. I didn't even have a cell phone, and so I think it might have been around or before the Rodney King beating in LA. But you grow up as a Black person knowing that the police can stop you for driving while Black, and but I had never had them pull guns on me before, so it was terrifying.
Absolutely. I imagine anyone who would be in that situation would feel terrified as well. With that being said, you grew up in Kansas. Did you have any similar situations or anything that you wanted to share with that experience?
My town was, just a small, quiet little town in Atchison, Kansas. Shout out to the 66002. Um, we when by the time I was growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of problems, but there were certain places we couldn't go, certain things we couldn't do. Um, and I didn't learn to swim as a kid because there weren't real organized swim lessons at the pool on the Black side of town. So swimming at the academy was the biggest challenge ever. It took me 6 times of taking freshman swimming to finally get the minimum. But that taught me grit and resiliency. I had to keep at it. And it would have been a shame to survive, Astro and Aero and not graduate because I couldn't swim. So, I don't swim well and I don't swim often, but I passed.
And that's what matters. And I agree with you with the grit, and just shows your determination. I myself was in the swim class 4 times, and I was, that person. I think people commented on, like, on our senior pictures, I was in the fountain with the life jacket, but that was like the known in my class. I was probably the worst swimmer in my class. So I understand that struggle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing all those experiences, Kate. We appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Next, we have our focus quote, and I'll read a quote to the audience. It's a Bible verse. It's Luke 12, verse 48. To whom much is given, much will be required. Would you like to share your thoughts on that quote?
Well, I think, I really feel blessed that, I was born with good health, a nice family, a nice home, certain academic abilities. And because of that, I feel an obligation. And I think it was drilled into us as kids that you have so much, um, share with other people. You have a talent, take your time and talent um, to help someone. So those are the lessons, and we grew up in a religious home, and that verse has always sort of stuck with me. to not forget that I do have a lot to give to people.
Thank you. Thank you. So, what is one experience from your childhood that has set the foundation for who you are as a woman today?
I think a little bit of it is back in the day, the March of Dimes, which is a foundation to help um, treat premature birth in kids. Back in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't the big fundraiser that it is today. They basically would send mothers a little sheet of all their neighbors, and you were expected to go knock on doors and collect dimes, the Mother's March of Dimes. And my mother did that. Um, and she would take one of us, usually me, uh, with her to knock on doors and collect dimes. I found out later it was because I'd had a brother who had died because he was premature. And my daughter, who's now 20, um, was premature as well, but she didn't die. So the work that my mother did 50 years ago to help find effective treatment for premature infants helped save my daughter's life. And that's just sort of the circle of things that, you don't know what you do today, the impact it will have 5 years, 10 years, 50 years from now. So I think that sort of, my mother was a volunteer with the Girl Scouts, with the PTA, with sports teams. She was an active parent in our lives, and there were 5 of us. So I think those lessons helped me be a better parent.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It seems that service and volunteering have kind of been part of your life well before the Air Force Academy. Like what would you say is if you clearly believe it's very important, can you touch on why you think that's important?
I just think that service, we didn't have the big, service before self, excellence, and all we do, motto at the academy when I was there. But serving in the military or service after service is so important, and it's just really a part of what I do. I didn't have to volunteer to be an ethics advisor at the academy. I sought that out and wanted to do that. So it all just sort of flows to the way I was raised, and back to that biblical verse of much is expected.
Can you touch on your experience as being the ethic advisor?
It was one of the hardest things I had to do. I had a cadet in my squadron that was accused of plagiarism, and the superintendent, the honor board met. He tried to get the superintendent to overturn it, but he was disenrolled. And it was really hard to see him go. And I think the case was poorly decided, but that happens. I also had cadets that were dualies when they did some of the things that they did, and the system of honor remediation. I guess it's okay. We didn't really have that when I was there in the 80s or 90s. If you were found guilty of an honor, for the most part, you got kicked out. So seeing that they're trying to instill, more of just not following the rules, but a more ethical behavior. And I took it seriously. My role as being an adult in the room during honor lessons. So and it was fun. It gave me a chance to get back at the academy and to see the changes in Fairchild Hall and to just see the place again. So it was a good experience.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. So, Kate, you're a part of the second class of Black women. Can you touch on that experience? What were some of the toughest struggles you remember facing?
Well, and just so that I'm real clear, my class 82 was the third class of women, but there were no Black women that graduated with the class of 1981. There was one woman I remember, but she didn't go on to graduate, and I don't know why. But I need to pay a little honor to Gail Colvin, and she was Gail Benjamin there, Gwen Knuckles, and Bev Turman, who were Black women in the class of 80. They had it way worse than we did. There were 8 Black women that graduated in my class. We anybody that graduates from the academy, it's the hardest thing they have ever done up until that point, I think. Academically, I was on the dean's list once. I was on the dean's other list twice. I've already talked about being unable to swim. And so during my free periods, I'd have to go and practice swimming. But clearly, you could be alone as a Black cadet. I was fortunate there were upper class Black men in my squadron when I was a 3 degree, and they were 3 degrees when I was a dually, and a couple firsties. I also relied on the Way of Life Committee to provide a little bit of support, and I played sports, so I did okay. But there were incidences where you knew it was either racism or sexism, and you didn't always know which. I had guys tell me women shouldn't be here. I heard a racial slur once when somebody pulled me off the strips to, I didn't greet well enough or whatever. And he said the N word and let me turn around and go back and get on the strip. So, but I don't think they were the everyday experience. I just think that when you're already having a hard day, when you're already having, issues on a GR, or you're feeling homesick, it can be isolating. So that's why I'm so excited to see the work of Way of Life and other groups. There's peregrines of Black women grads that try to support cadets because we can't get through it by ourselves. It's too difficult to do it by yourself.
Thank you for sharing that. So with those incidents, those very vulgar incidents that you expressed with, being called N-word and some of the sexism you experienced, they weren't often. So how did you, when they did happen, like how were you able to move past it and get through it?
Well, I think you don't want to let anybody down, and you just, suck it up, embrace the suck. I think sometimes you just sort of put it to the back of your head and you press on. But I was a small town kid, and people in my hometown, would stop my father on the street and ask him how I was doing. So there was no way I was going to quit. There was absolutely, and I wanted to several times. I mean, I was almost to the point at least once every year where I was ready to go and quit. And I had some good mentors who taught me out of it and helped me to see that there was something past the academy. But I think it goes to, I'm not going to let them run me out of here. This is mine to take, and I'm going to take it. So I think that was my perspective of it. But it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always fun. But I survived. I have the ring. I have the diploma on the wall, and nobody can take that from me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So fast forward a few years. I know you went to law school to pursue your degree. So what inspired you to get a law degree, and what words of encouragement do you have for the audience who are interested in law?
I'm showing my age again, but Thurgood Marshall was the first Black Supreme Court justice. And that was like 1967. I was just a little kid, but I remember what a big deal it was. And I thought maybe I could be a Supreme Court judge. I mean, that's what a little 7-year-old doesn't know, that it takes a whole lot to be that. But I always liked the law, and yet I thought when I went to the academy I was going to be an engineer because I liked math and science, but math and science didn't really like me that well. So I was a management major. I like to say cooperate and graduate. And so I always thought, I'd be a lawyer. And then it came time after I got out of the Air Force that to advance in private industry, I needed an advanced degree. And I thought better to go to law school at 30 than to go to business school and go part-time. So I'd always wanted to study the law. I took a bunch of law classes at the academy, and I did well in those classes. And I like to argue. I like things lawyers do. So what I have for anybody who's thinking about it, don't let your USAFA GPA deter you from applying to the best schools. I applied to 5 law schools, and I didn't get into only one of them. I got a scholarship at 3 of the 4 places that I applied to. And so I went to Notre Dame because, hey, it's Notre Dame, they got football. And also because I could study abroad for a year. So if you want to go to law school, do it. Law schools will look at the magnitude of classes you took at USAFA. They will look at your life experiences. They will look at the work that you've done. And they will look at the value you bring to their program, having been a member of the military. So go for it. But don't do it for the prestige or the money, because oftentimes the jobs aren't there. Oftentimes the money's not there. Public interest law doesn't pay very much. But if you like that study and you think you can make a difference with that law degree, I say go for it. And if anybody really wants to talk more in depth about it, feel free to contact me.
Awesome. You said you studied abroad in law school. Where'd you
I
go?
did.
Experience.
We were Notre Dame's one of the few, if only, law schools that can run a program for the whole second year. So we were in downtown London. There were about 30 of us in our class, and we were there for the full academic year. Notre Dame sent a professor over from the home campus every semester, and then they hired either American expat lawyers or British lawyers to teach us that year. And what was really good about it, we could get really, specialists and experts in that field, because they only were teaching one class a week at Notre Dame, as well as the experiences of seeing how a different legal system works was beneficial. And then I had it so that most of my classes are on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So almost every weekend I went somewhere. I got a chance to go to Russia. I went to France a couple of times. I went to Spain. I went to Ireland, Italy. I really got a chance to travel that year. So it was a fun year, but it was an educational year as well.
That's awesome. So how hard was that transition from a business degree to then getting a law degree? Did business help you? Did it not help you?
It's funny because Notre Dame was easy compared to the academy. At the academy, everybody's taking 6, 7 classes a semester. Um, Lots of GRs and quizzes and papers and things. And so when I was at Notre Dame, the only thing I had to do was, get up, wash my face, put on a baseball cap, go to class. We had one final at the end of the semester, and that's all you had to do. So you just do your reading. You didn't have to march to lunch. You didn't have to wear a uniform. You didn't have to do intramurals. Nobody yelled at you outside of class. Um, and it was just a much more collegial sort of experience. And I did remarkably well, at Notre Dame academically, almost a whole point better GPA. So I'm proud of that. I was older, more mature student, and I was happy. So you typically do better at school when you're happy. So it was a great experience. But once again, there were 5 Black students in my class of 175, and we were in South Bend, Indiana, and it was rich kid school. And so it was a challenge being at the law school, and people questioned our right to be there. At least one time in my experience, I got into a yelling match with a kid who claimed I took the spot of somebody else, and he didn't know me. He didn't know my GPA. He didn't know my experience. He didn't know Jack, and he got in my face and said I took a spot from somebody who was more deserving. So, that happens. It still happens.
Wow, very profound. So now I see that you're getting your MA in public leadership. What's your goal with this degree, and why this degree?
I don't know. I swore that I would never take another class for credit. And one of my friends from the Truman National Security Project said, Kate, there's this program. It trains people, mostly veterans, in how to take your time after you served, and whether it's to run for office, manage a campaign, um, work at a nonprofit. So I think my long-term goal after this program is over is to be the executive director of a nonprofit. It's reinforced my ability to read and write and think critically. I struggled last semester because there were some technologies, like how to use a data program to analyze election data. Um, and I got the concept, but I couldn't work the software all the time. Excel should be my friend, but it is not. Um, but it challenged me to think a little bit about how you can predict what voters will do, what they won't do. And so it's given me a good sense of public policy, how to advocate for change. So I think I could see myself as a executive director of some organization that is trying to make a difference. So I think it just follows along with the theme of my life. And I was able to get a scholarship to go because I didn't have any GI Bill money because of the time that I served. So if somebody tells you they want to pay for you to go to school to get a degree, you should go. So here I am, a student again.
Absolutely. And you touched on election, and that kind of transitions into my next question. Like, why do you think it's important to be politically aware and active? And what advice do you have for people who really don't know where to begin?
Ask somebody that knows more than you, that's trustworthy. Always vote, and vote for everything from the president down to the school board member of your kid's school, to the city commission, to the people that you call to fix a pothole in your street, or that a traffic light is out. Because all of those people can make a difference in your day-to-day life. In fact, local elections are probably more important than national elections. But I've always, been interested in elections and who's running, because those people can change the trajectory of your life. It wasn't until 1976 that women could attend service academies. Okay. So you have to look at, like, why did that happen? How do you influence that? Are there other changes you want to make in your life? How do you advocate for that? So, but there's such a disinformation campaign out there right now, and I think that's why so many people went wrong on January the 6th. They listened to bad sources. Extremism. There was an academy grad that was on the floor of the Senate. How did he get radicalized to think so differently? So when I ask people to ask somebody, make sure you're asking people that know, that are rational about it. Read up about it, listen to reputable news sources, and critically think about when you hear something. Does that make sense to you? Don't just take it for the absolute truth. So, yeah.
Thank you. And you said the local elections can potentially change the trajectory of your life. I've never heard it from that lens before. And I know oftentimes, we tend to focus on those big name elections, and those smaller elections just kind of get pushed to the side, or people don't know anything about it. Why do you think it can have such a tremendous impact?
Well, for example, your right to vote is in the Constitution, but how you go about being able to exercise that right is done by your state legislature. They set the time and place where you can vote. They set the rules about whether you can vote absentee, whether you can mail in your ballot, whether the polls are open 10 days before the election. They set all of those little rules. Likewise, the legislation will select the committee that does redistricting. People have heard the term gerrymandering, where who draws the shape of the electoral district. Those things are important. They draw those lines sometimes to benefit one party or the other. So that's a state legislative issue. So, and part of the reason that this election, the presidential in 2020, was so close, even though 8 million more people voted for Joe Biden, but because of the way the districts were set, which electoral college votes did each state give to candidates. So all those little things happen at the lowest level of government. Or whether you can, whether I can put grass in my front yard. That's a state legislature regulation in Arizona. How high can my tree be? Those are things done at the state level. And those are the things that affect my day to day.
That makes sense. And you touched on the January 6th attack on the Capitol. I'm stationed at Andrews Air Force Base, and I remember watching it live, and DC is like right up the street. What was going through your mind when all this was going on, and what was your reaction immediately after?
I was shocked, and I've always been cynical of the group of supporters that supported the previous administration, but I never expected them to break through the Capitol and try to hunt down and kill people. I was shocked. My group, Common Defense, it's a veterans organization that advocates for issues, about the election. We were founded as Vets versus Hate. We helped with the impeachment campaign the first time, and so we were aware of radical supporters, but I don't think any of us expected them to do what they did. We thought they would have lots of lawsuits and they would do everything they could to not count the votes and things like that. But none of us expected them to, break into the Capitol, attack the Capitol Police, um, um, hurt other people. Um, it, it was shocking. Um, yeah.
Yes, it was. And I think, it was shocking for the entire country and the nation. And with that being said, what does legacy mean to you? And where do you wish to leave your mark on this world?
I think people um, think about um, what people are going to say about them years from now. What are they going to say at my funeral? And I hope they say, Kate tried to make a difference. When people say, what were you doing um, during the most recent administration? My daughter can say and tell her kids, my mom went to Washington to advocate for impeachment. My mom went and talked to senators about ending the forever wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and Yemen and Syria, that she participated in our democracy, that she tried to make it better. So, you know, I think it matters because when good men and women are silent, evil wins. So yeah, I want my legacy to be that I ran my big mouth and I tried to make a difference. Um, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for
you're
that.
welcome.
And we usually ask our guests to recommend a book. Do you have a book that you'd recommend to the audience?
I have several. I've got Barack Obama's new book on the nightstand, and I just haven't found time to start it. I've started Isabel Wilkerson's Cast, and I've not read enough of it to know whether it's a great book. I've heard it's a great book, but what I'm going to encourage everybody in this audience to do is to pick up a copy of the Constitution. We all swore an oath to the Constitution, our first day at the academy. And we probably at that point hadn't even read the whole Constitution. I know I hadn't. I've since, read it in con law class at the academy. I read it numerous times while I was in law school. And I usually have one with me in the car. So when people try to tell me what this amendment says and what it doesn't say, I can say, see, or look. Um, but yeah, I encourage you, because you swore an oath to that Constitution, that you pick it up and read it. And it won't take forever, but just to understand the power of that document. And it by no means is perfect. I mean, it made Black people 3/5 of a person at one point. So it's not a perfect document, but if you don't know where we came from and you don't know the promise that America has, and it hasn't lived up to its promise, uh, but I think it's up to us to force it to do so. For America to be the America it can be, we all got to do our part. So yeah, so no great books, but I say the Constitution.
Thank you, Kate. I know Ed Hopkins, class of 95, also a lawyer. He's very big on reading. And that's one of the things that he always tells people, you need to go read. What would you say is like, why is reading yourself so important?
Well, and I do a lot of reading. I read for, fun, just, science fiction, escapism. I read to learn. I think we're lifelong learners, and there are things we can all learn more about. Um, I just think that to be able to speak uh, with authenticity, you need to be well read. So, and it was the thing I used to do as a kid to get out of doing chores. It's like, Mom, I'm reading right now, and my family stressed education, so she would let me read to get out of chores. I had a brother who was not into reading, and he had to do some of those chores. So reading has always been good for me.
It's great to hear. And do you have a final word of advice or encouragement?
I think we are stronger together. If you can reach out and help somebody, do that. Stay connected to your classmates, to way of life, to peregrines, to your brother, sister, sibling, veterans, because being a veteran, having served, brings everybody, I think, a little bit of trauma, whether you've been deployed or not. Um, and so being there for each other, um, I just think that's the most important. I had a West Point grad text me this morning because we hadn't talked for a little bit, just to say, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to be on a little vacation, so I'm good." But the fact that she reached out to check on me um, was important.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the gems that you've dropped.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It was really my pleasure. I wasn't the best cadet. My time as an officer wasn't long, but the academy certainly prepared me for everything that I've done since then. So um, even at times where it bothers me about some of the things that happened, I know it was the best mistake for me to be there. That it made a way for me. So um, I still have you know um, fondness for the people that I went through that with. So it's all good. It's all good now.
Yeah. On behalf of the Way of Life Alumni Organization, Kate, we thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.